Engineer is one of the more oddball characters in Garden Warfare. He's slow, not all that tanky, and has a slow-firing launcher-type weapon. Most people tend to stray away from the launcher engineers due to how clunky and slow they can feel to play, so not many people have a proper grasp on which engineers are above or below average, so this video's job is to see just how good or bad each engineer is. I've calculated the rate of fire, DPS, and time to kill of all the engineers, as well as some oddball stats. If you want to skip to any specific part of the video, I've left timestamps in the description for you to jump around to the different sections, as well as links to all my data if you want to do it yourself. I'd also recommend checking the comment section for any pinned comments, as I'll be using those to make corrections, clarify anything I said, or highlight something someone else may have commented. With that covered, let's get into the stats. Before we get into the more interesting stuff, there's some general stats to go over. Basically anything observable in-game or stats that don't require any math. First, let's go over ammo. Sanitation Expert, Welder, Painter, and Engineer all have 12 shots by default and 15 with the upgrade. Landscaper and Electrician both have 10 shots by default and 12 with the upgrade. Mechanic has 30 shots by default and 35 with the upgrade, giving him the highest ammo capacity if you don't count Roadie Z while spamming. Plumber, however, has the lowest ammo capacity, having 8 by default and 9 with the upgrade. AC Parry has 15 shots by default and 18 with the upgrade. Roadie Z by default can deal damage 25 times before overheating and 32 times with the upgrade. However, by spamming the fire button, I was able to get him to do a maximum of 120 instances of damage. For reload, Engineer, Welder, Mechanic, and AC Parry all take 2.5 seconds to reload by default and 2 seconds with the upgrade. Painter, Plumber, and Roadie Z all take 2.7 seconds to reload or overheat and 2.2 seconds with the upgrade. Landscaper and Sanitation Expert both have a faster reload at 2.2 seconds by default and 1.7 with the upgrade. Electrician has a ridiculously long 3-second reload by default, and a 2.5-second reload with the upgrade, making him have both less ammo and a slower reload. Travel time is used to calculate time to kill, and is the amount of time a projectile must travel in order to reach its target. Engineer actually doesn't have a long-range travel time, as his projectiles explode prematurely in midair. His medium-range travel time is 0.3 seconds, however. Welder has a faster projectile speed at 0.29 seconds for medium and 0.862 for long. Electrician is slightly slower than Welder, and Landscaper is slightly faster. It's also important to note that Landscaper shots will also explode prematurely in the air, but not nearly as fast as Engineers. Painter has the fastest projectile speed at 0.132 seconds for medium range, and 0.313 seconds for long range. Sanitation Expert is the slowest at 0.442 seconds in medium range, and 1.316 seconds at long range. Plumber is slightly faster than that, and AC Parry is the next fastest. Damage numbers show us which characters deal the most single-shot damage. It's interesting to note that most engineers don't have damage fall-off, or the process of damage decreasing the longer projectile travels. In fact, the only engineer with damage fall-off is Mechanic, who is also the only engineer to have separate values for headshot and body shot damage. Mechanic deals 10 to 8 damage on a headshot, and 9 to 7 damage on a body shot. Roadie Z barely beats up Mechanic at 11 damage with both upgrades, and is followed close by AC Parry with 16 damage. AC Parry also has the same visual bug as Rockp, where his damage shown isn't the actual damage that he's dealing. Painter deals the highest single shot damage at 48, followed up by Engineer at 43 and Sanitation Expert at 42. Electrician and Plumber follow up after that with 38 and 36 respectively, and after that is Landscaper at 33 and Welder at 25. For splash damage, Welder, Electrician, and Landscaper all deal 10, Engineer deals 20, Painter deals 15, Plumber deals 25, Sanitation Expert does 18, and AC Parry does 7. Finally, AC Parry's time to freeze is 3 seconds by default and 2.4 seconds with the upgrade. Rate of fire is calculated 2 ways. The first is dividing a character's clip size or how long it takes them to empty that clip, and the other is dividing the number 1 by a character's attack interval, or basically the time between shots. For most engineers, the second is the most accurate, but for high fire rate characters like Mechanic, the first is usually the better option. Engineer fires at 80 rounds per minute, but unlike the other characters, there aren't any other instances of 80 rounds per minute within his variants. Instead, 90 rounds per minute is the most common, being shared by Welder, Electrician, Plumber, and Sanitation Expert. Yes, unlike Rockp and Berry Shooter, Plumber actually has a higher rate of fire. Painter is the only one who fires slower at 65 rounds per minute. Landscaper is faster at 140 rounds per minute, and AC Parry is faster than that at 200. Mechanic is pretty fast at 600, beating out a lot of foot soldiers who share a similar weapon. Roadie Z's takes a damage have a rate of fire of 250, but as many people know, you can very easily increase that near infinitely by spamming the trigger faster than 250 rounds per minute, which isn't all that hard. My speed is around 720 rounds per minute, give or take, so I'll be using that as a general average of what to expect for most ROTZs. Damage per second, or DPS, allows us to see how characters perform over time. It isn't as accurate as time to kill, but it's still good as a general overview. Engineer will be used as our basic average, as he's the default variant. He has 57 damage per second at all ranges he can reach. Welder is worse than Engineer at all ranges, even taking the worst spot overall. Electrician is pretty much even with Engineer at all ranges. Just ignore that part where I marked him green, and we'll just all go on with our day. Mechanic takes the top spot for both medium and long range, and is better than default at close, actually going up to 100 DPS. Pretty impressive for an Engineer. Painter and Plumber are both worse, and Landscaper and Sanitation Expert are both better. ROTZ by default is worse, but by spamming the trigger, he takes the top spot for close range with a whopping 132 damage per second. And that's for someone using a normal Xbox One controller, who's not even that fast. AC Parry, however, is worse at all ranges. Time to kill shows us how fast a character can deal a certain amount of damage, and is much more accurate than DPS. You get time to kill by either dividing a health pool by a character's DPS, or multiplying one less than the number of shots needed to vanquish an enemy by your character's attack interval. Due to most Engineers' burst fire nature, we'll be predominantly using the second method. We'll also have to add the character in question's projectile travel time, depending on the range. Engineers once again are basic average, with the exception of long range where Electrician is used, due to him being the closest to Engineer. Welder takes the top spot at all ranges and health pools, with the exception of close range 100 and 125. However, both he and Sanitation Expert have an extra line under them. These lines take into account the guaranteed fire and toxic damage, and subtract that from the health pools they're in. Welder is still pretty bad, but he's faster in a couple of health pools after this change. Electrician is pretty average. At close and medium range, he varies between better and worse in a bunch of health pools, making him basically a stat swap akin to Marine Biologist. Mechanic is better in all health pools at all ranges, taking the top spots for all health pools at long and medium range. He's only better at close range due to obvious reasons. Painter overall is an improvement at long range, but at medium and close, his fast projectile speed stops compensating for his extremely slow rate of fire, and he falls under. Plumber is overall worse, only being better in a few odd health pools here and there. Landscaper is a direct improvement, being better at all health pools and ranges. At close and medium range, Sanitation Expert is a direct improvement, but at long range he's either worse or average. AC Parry is worse at all ranges and health pools, and his freeze doesn't do much until you reach 175 health enemies. But countering chomper is kind of Engineer's thing, so you decide if it's worth it. ROTZ by default is kinda shit. We've gone over this, but with spamming the trigger, he takes the top spot by a mile, vanquishing anyone with 125 health or less in less than a second. He can even kill Leaf Shield Torchwood in only 4 seconds. And yes, there are people who still think he's bad. That was Engineer. Like Pea Shooter, he has a bunch of really average variants, with a few like Mechanic and ROTZ that just completely destroy people and probably don't deserve to be that good. I'll be doing Chomper next, so make sure to subscribe to stay notified of when that happens. And if you found anything here useful, why not like the video or drop a comment down below. You all seem to really like these, so I'll be making more of them. Anyway, I need to finish Power Chomper, so I'll see you in the next one.